If you want to draw accurate conclusions, you can't just rely on impressions based on anecdotal evidence. You must have accurate data and a meaningful sample size. For the Derby, that means looking at how fast horses have actually run and at all the horses that have run in past Derbies, not just the winners or the ones we remember or bet on. In the studies that follow, a new top is defined as more than one Thoro-Graph point faster than a horse has ever run before. A pair means within 1 point either way of the previous top. An off race is more than 1 point worse but less than 4 points worse than the previous top, and an X is 4 points or more worse. The first thing to remember, which we point out every year, is that even though these are developing young horses and lots of them have run new tops recently, very few run new tops in the Derby. It's less than 2 a year on average, with a far higher percentage running X's. Another thing we have discovered is that when it comes to the number of preps as a 3-year-old, less is more. Horses with 2 or 3 preps both have about the same chance of at least pairing their tops, with those with 2 preps having a better chance of running a new top. But both of those groups also have shown much better results than those with 4 or more preps. This year, we put together some new studies. Since trainers are now giving more time between races, and the Florida and Louisiana Derbies have been moved to 5 weeks out, we decided to see whether spacing right before the Derby made a difference. The results were eye-popping. Horses on 3 and 4 weeks rest did about the same, but those with 5 or 6 weeks rest have performed much better, and the sample size isn't that small. Every year in February, people start trying to pick the Derby winner, and I tell them it's too soon. The reason is that in February, no matter how good a horse is, you don't know what his pattern will be coming into the Derby, and it matters. It turns out that none of the patterns are great except one, coming into the Derby off a pair of tops. Those that do are almost 50-50 to at least run back to their top, which is twice as high as for the rest of the population. So, if you want to check all the boxes, find a horse that is already fast enough to win, has had less than 4 starts this year, has had 5 or 6 weeks rest, and comes into the Derby off a pair of tops. California Chrome is by California sire Lucky Pulpit. Average TGI development is 3 points a year from ages 2 to 4, but this stallion's runners are precocious and don't develop as much. This one was brought out earlier too and is heavily raced, having made 10 starts before the Derby. He improved dramatically in December with no warning and has basically held that level since then. It appears he was eased late and could have run a little better last time, and he does come into this off a pair of tops. But he's also now coming off 4 big efforts and a lot of racing. Given all that, and his pedigree, we suspect further short-term development is unlikely. So the questions are, can he win without improving? And at what point will all that running and all those efforts take a toll? He's a contender for sure, but others are as fast, so he's no bargain as a favorite. Candy Boy had a terrific developmental pattern last year and looked every bit a Derby contender in December. The problem is, not only hasn't he gone on, he hasn't even got back to his 2-year-old top, which is a big negative. Cheat 2 is trained by Bob Baffert, which is a plus. Baffert actually has been able to get a decent percentage of his Derby starters to run new tops, which is unusual. This colt is by sprint sire Henny Hughes and ran well in his first 2 at 6 furlongs. He repeated that figure at a route, then moved forward a little last time out. He has had only 2 preps and 5 weeks rest, which are pluses, but Baffert has not been treating this one like he thinks he's a real Derby horse, acting like he's not sure he wants to run him. This colt would need a new top just to contend, and his pedigree works against him. Commanding Curve is by Master Command, whose sire profile tilts the opposite direction from Lucky Pulpit and Henny Hughes. He gets runners that get better with age and distance. Sure enough, this one started to get good late last year and has never gone back, by which we mean bounced, since then. And his last effort puts him in range. Commanding Curve has a forward-moving pattern, and with only 2 preps and 5 weeks rest, has the best chance of anyone in this year's Derby to run a new top. Overall, Commanding Curve reminds us of Victory Gallop and Mind That Bird. late developing patterns aside, both of those were deep closers that had to deal with coming from behind in a big field, as this one will. Oh, one more thing. Dallas Stewart has had 3 Derby starters. 2 ran new tops, including Golden Soul last year. Dance with Fate ran his best figure on dirt last year and hasn't been back on that surface as a 3-year-old. He exploded last time with a huge figure on Poly to win the Bluegrass, one that was not only a 6-point new top, but 8 points better than his 2-year-old top. Since 1995, 58 horses have come into the Derby following jumps of 3 points or more in their previous start. Their overall success hasn't been great, although they've done better over the last few years. But when we break it down further, to horses that have run a top of 5 points or more, the picture changes. They have done extremely poorly in the Derby, with 10 of the 14 backing up more than 4 points. The only one who was able to pair up was Lines of Battle last year, and his situation was unusual. He was making only his 2nd start of the year, was first-time dirt, and wasn't very fast. We expect Dance with Fate to bounce, especially on only 3 weeks rest. Danza is trained by Pletcher, who as usual has multiple entries. Pletcher's been able to get a decent percentage of his runners to pair up, but has only been able to get 1 new top in the Derby. This colt ran twice early, then had a long layoff. He exploded in the Arkansas Derby in his 2nd start back, but the effort looked even better than it was because Bravo saved ground on both turns. On just 3 weeks rest, it's unlikely he'll go forward again, and a repeat of his last will not be good enough here. He also could bounce badly. While his recent jump isn't quite as extreme as for some others in this race, it's still big, and given the short rest in his layoff history, it may hurt him. General A-Rod shows a good pattern of gradual development to get to strong figures, with his backward move of less than a point last time qualifying as a pair for the studies. This is one of 2 horses in this year's Derby that checks all the boxes. He's fast, has had 5 weeks rest, comes into the race off a pair of tops, and has had less than 4 preps. In fact, if his first start this year had come a day earlier, he would only have had 2. The one negative here is that Rosario has a history of wide trips in the Derby, as well as on this horse in much smaller fields. Harry's Holiday was slow last year and not enough better this year to matter. With no good dirt figures, this one has a good shot to finish last. Opportunity came quite a distance in his first 4 starts, throwing a serious figure in the Rebel before bouncing on 3 weeks rest. Baffert or no Baffert, we would be surprised if this one ran a new top. This will be his 6th start of the year, and that was a pretty high bounce. It's less than 50-50 he can get back to his top this soon, and even if he does, it would make him just a contender. If he moves forward a little now, Opportunity could be interesting on 5 weeks rest in the Belmont. Intense Holiday is one of the fastest horses in this race on his best and one of the trickiest to read. He made a huge jump to a big figure to win the Risen Star, which turned out to be a key prep, then backed up a couple of points while bearing him badly last time out. This is an 0-2, literally, and as the Thoro pattern shows, it's one of the weaker patterns in the race. Having said that, the Thoro pattern doesn't make distinctions about spacing, and this colt has had 5 weeks rest and 10 weeks since the big effort. He's working well at Churchill, and like we said, he's a tricky read. Metal Count ran a good one on Poly last year, sandwiched between 2 poor dirt efforts. This year, he ran okay on dirt at Gulfstream, then raced wide at Keeneland, earning a huge new top over Poly. That he would like that surface is no surprise. Dynaformers usually are much better on grass and synthetic. The last 2 for this one came 8 days apart, and horses that run close together like that almost always start tailing off afterward. And it's aside from what we already know about horses coming off big tops into the Derby. Ride on Curlin ran a couple of big figures at 2, but bounced badly following both. He took 3 starts to get back to that level this year, which is not great. And though he was able to pair up last time, has never broken through his 2-year-old top. Combine that with having 4 preps, only 3 weeks rest, and needing a big new top, and even Burrell saving a point or 2 of ground probably won't help enough. Sam Rat ran a big one in his first try around 2 turns in December, and has been fast and solid ever since. This one checks every box but one. He's fast, had less than 4 preps, and is off a pair of tops, but has 4 weeks rest, not 5. The real question marks concern trainer Violet. He usually gets better figures between November and April than the rest of the year, and almost never ships to run away from where he's stable. But we do note his record at Churchill is strong, albeit with a small sample. Tapiture threw a good 2-year-old top pretty much out of nowhere, but hasn't improved much this year and comes into this a couple of points short of competitive. His last was better than it looked due to a wide trip, but it really needed to be a forward move to make him a serious contender now. Even though this qualifies as a pair pattern, it's unlikely in only 3 weeks rest Tapiture will produce the jump he needs. Uncle Si exploded with a huge run around 2 turns in his second start, reacted a little to that effort for a couple of races, then moved forward a little last time with a decent effort, completely concealed by a wide trip. The negatives here are that he shows no development, needs a new top to be competitive, and doesn't have a work over the track. But a forward move is not impossible off this pattern. He's as good as most and better than many, and it'll be an awful big price. Vickers in Trouble ran a huge figure in his first dirt try, won despite bouncing, then got back to his top on the Risen Star, which was completely concealed by a wide trip. All he had to do to win the Louisiana Derby was run back to that, and he did. We keep hearing this horse won't like the distance, but he ran his top at 1 1/8, and you wouldn't think it would be a problem from Intimist's profile. Vickers in Trouble is the second horse in the race who checks all the boxes. He's fast enough to win without a new top. He's had less than 4 preps, 5 weeks rest, and comes into the race off a pair of tops. Vince Ramos ran slow in his only start last year, but moved forward quickly to a decent figure at Tampa. This colt is bred well for Synth and Polly, and we expected him to run better last time, so we have no idea what happened. But if you throw that one out, it's been 2 months since his top, and he could throw a good one. The problem is there aren't too many new tops run in the Derby, and Pletcher is usually not the one who gets them. We Miss Artie is by Artie Schiller, whose profile runs to synthetic and grass, not dirt. This colt so far has been that way too, and not fast enough even on the surfaces he prefers. Wicked Strong ran a couple of decent ones last year, didn't show much in Florida, then exploded when he got back to New York to win the Wood while running an 8-point new top. Obviously, this one fits the pattern of those that have bounced in the Derby following big jumps. The one caveat here is that Jerkins is a guy who runs very hot and cold, and recently he's been very hot. He's been getting a lot of jump ups, but they've come in Aqueduct, and Jerkins hasn't shown he can take a show on the road. Wildcat Red ran 3 good sprint figures last year and ran even better this year at Gulfstream as he's gradually been stretched out. It's hard to know what to make of this colt. He's a borderline fit on number power, he has 5 weeks rest, and he does come in off a pair of tops. But he's already way outrun his pedigree, with neither his dam nor siblings ever having broken 8, and he's clearly a question mark at the distance. This one may be ready to tail off, and we also note trainer Garofalo has done poorly at Churchill. Pablo Del Monte was wound tight for an April 2-year-old debut by Ward, who specializes in that. He came back running last fall, but hasn't developed a step since then, and there's no reason to think he's going to jump way forward now at 1 1/4 on dirt. We can divide this year's Derby field into 4 groups. The first contains those we don't like at all: Candy Boy, Harry's Holiday, Tapiture, and We Miss Artie. The next group is the largest, containing horses we don't like and don't plan to use, but which have either a big number somewhere or a decent pattern, but not both. G2, Dance with Fate, Danza, Metal Count, Ride on Curlin, Vincent Ramos, Wicked Strong, and Wildcat Red. The second strongest group is comprised of 4 horses. California Chrome has solid figures, so we have to put him here, but he's no faster than several others and may be over the top, so we can't use him at a short price. Opportunity is here because we wanted to have 4 in the group, but if he's really second favorite, he's tough to use as well. The other two from this group definitely can be used, especially in exotics. Uncle Si is unlikely to win, but could get into the Tri or Superfecta at an enormous price. And Intense Holiday damn near made it into the top group. The top group contains the 4 horses we really like. Samrat, General A-Rod, and Vickers in Trouble fit the profile the best, and as it happens, the latter two were yours truly's only 2 future book bets. Commanding Curve is very live at an enormous price. Every time I see his sheet, I see Victory Gallop and mind that bird. The draw was very bad for Wicked Strong. Mirage tends to lose ground anyway, and this horse might have to pair his last figure just to hit the Superfecta. The rail will either turn out to be really good or really bad for Vickers in Trouble, and Maker training both him and the horse just outside as well could make for some interesting jock instructions. Whoever's right behind Harry's Holiday when that one spits it out could be in a lot of trouble. But overall, the draw is very favorable for the ones we like. Samrat drew great, and General A-Rod drew inside Wildcat Red, so unless Rosario does something really dumb, he shouldn't be too wide. Intense Holiday could lose some ground from out there, but the post shouldn't matter to Commanding Curve, who should drop out the back of the field. We like 4 long shots in this year's Derby: Vickers in Trouble, Samrat, General A-Rod, and Commanding Curve.